Hey guys, welcome to Emissions Heck Part 2. Now in Part 1 of the fight versus Tommy Micah and the state of Colorado, we had the 1978 Subaru DL, and I came out victorious. Now let me explain what I'm talking about. Here in Boulder, Colorado, we have to bring even our classic cars through emissions testing. And in last week's episode with the Subaru, it wouldn't pass. We had to get the carburetor fully rebuilt by a Subaru DL expert is what I'm calling them, and then you had to put E85 in the tank, and we barely squeaked by. And we were stoked because we had gotten a car that was never meant to meet the emissions requirement set forth by the state of Colorado to meet the emissions requirement. Well, we were happy because that disaster was over, and now we are back with disaster part 2, the 1993 Rover Mini. So here's the background of this car before we talk about the disaster. We bought this car at the beginning of the summer as a non-runner. The guy said he went to put it in gear and it went bang, and that was the end of it. So we brought it to our friends over at Accent Allies, and our lovely mechanic Ted went through, well, the whole front end basically, and it turns out what had happened is the clutch decided to Brexit from the flywheel, and all 6 bolts had fallen out and created this mishmash of bits. So he put a new clutch in it, new kit, put the engine back with the transmission, full subframe back in. The thing ran beautifully. It runs really, really well. He even has a Mini Expert. This thing is dialed in. It's just an absolute peach, but the state of Colorado does not think so, because vehicles in this state post-1976 have to go through the dreaded emissions requirement in order for us to get permanent license plates. This car is a 1993, even though this is a Japanese domestic market import that was never intended to meet any kind of EPA regulations. Of course, the lovely state of Colorado said, you gotta register it, you gotta get it emissions tested. So here's what happened when I tried to do that. Well, first what happened was I drove up, big smile on my face. I said, here's a car, have at it. And they said, well, we can't actually emissions test it because it's right-hand drive. You have to get this special form. And I said, what do you mean special form? And get this saga, if you have an imported car, the state of Colorado makes you meet with what they call a master mechanic. And they say these master mechanics, I kid you not, know single port injected minis inside and out. Would you imagine that? Some dude that worked for the state of Colorado is a master mechanic on single port injected minis. Little suspicious of that, but anyways, this master mechanic looks at the car and checks the boxes that the car is supposed to have. So they're like, this car has fuel injection, it has an oxygen sensor, and it has a PCV system. So now every time I get it emissions tested, the state of Colorado looks at it and they look at the sheet and they say, this car has to have fuel injection system, it has to have an oxygen sensor, and it has to have a PCV valve. Luckily, I found that sheet that the previous owner had left me, so I didn't have to do that, but brought it in. It had all 3 of those things and some other little bits. But that master mechanic also decided that this car, this Japanese spec Mini, needed to go through a 2-speed idle test where they poke a probe up the exhaust and look at the emissions requirements. Now, the 2-speed idle test is not the most stringent of tests, but it still is quite unrealistic, I think you'll find, for most classic cars, including this Mini. You can see it absolutely failed both the HCs and the COs by quite a good margin. So I can't actually register this car in the county we work in. Now, we had a lovely friend of ours suggest that we register it out in Georgia at his place, but we kind of want to keep it legal. You know, we are a YouTube channel. We want to keep it within the books here. So now I have to go through the daunting process of getting a Japanese spec car, never sold in the US, to pass Colorado's emissions requirements. And they think that this car needs to meet the same emissions requirements as, like, I don't know, a 1990s Toyota. Is that realistic? I don't think it is, but that's a saga for another time. If I spend enough money on this car trying to get it to pass, well over $700, then I can get an exemption. So I think that's the route we're gonna end up going. Now that you've heard my rant, let's talk about one other problem, and I'll start that by popping the hood. The world's smallest hood. Ready? It's more of a cat flap. So when we picked this car up from Ted's place, it ran beautifully. We drove it around the block, it ran beautifully. And then as we were pulling back into a shop, we hit a bump. A pretty big bump, granted, but a bump, and the engine cut out like nothing. Totally cut out. Couldn't get it to start. We had the mechanics look at it. They couldn't figure it out. Luckily, Ted is a guy who is a genuine real expert in single port injected cars, and he says, these cars have this little dude right here, which is an inertia relay. This shuts off when the car thinks it has gotten into an accident and cuts fuel to the engine. So you push this button, you tell the car, actually you haven't gotten into an accident, you're fine, and then you can motor down the road. Well, the issue is that button has gone bad on this car and it just cuts out kind of randomly. Not a great thing if you're looking to drive down the road. So, where are you supposed to get an inertia fuel cutoff switch for a Japanese market Mini Cooper? Well, I hit eBay and it turns out you can get them out of the United Kingdom. They're about 24 pounds, so somewhere in the $30 range. And then of course you have to come from the UK, but I'm a little bit impatient because I really want to drive this car around. So I did some digging and it turns out, from what I could find, that part number off of the single port injected Minis, even the Japanese ones, is the same as the Land Rover Discovery 2s and the Land Rover Freelander. Kind of makes sense because they were all in the Rover family to begin with. So I'm like, well maybe if I find the inertial fuel cutoff switch for a Land Rover, it'll work in the Mini. Couldn't find one of those either. But then I went on the Napa Auto Parts website and I just started poking around. They had a couple switches. They all look different except for one. Take a look at this. Just picked this up. It was $71, which is kind of expensive. But other than it being red, this generic fuel cutoff switch looks almost identical to the one that's on the car. So let me get a Torx bit, which I should have had prepared, and we'll pull it off and see if it works. Hey, can you keep them entertained while I get a Torx bit?
Yeah, I can keep them entertained.
Show them what you did to Rocky and what you're doing.
No, I'll talk about this car. Did you talk about the fact that we're going to have some problems with emissions?
Yes.
Did you tell them what the plan is?
Yes, spend over $700.
Yeah, so it looks like we're going to have to spend more money on getting this emissions because it completely failed, unfortunately. But I got to tell you, when you look at the stance on this vehicle, when you see it going down the road, I mean, come look at it from behind you. This one's just plain black at this point. I mean, you look at the stance, you look at that exhaust pipe, and there is no, and I'm sorry, Mini, but it's true, there is no current Mini, including any of the 3 GPs, that looks as purposeful, as quick, as sporty, and just as, ready to go racing as a classic Mini with fat tires and bulging fender flares. There's just something about this that screams, this is a car that is purposeful, fast, fun, and will take on the big boys, let's say in Monte Carlo. Yeah, we need to do that flag. I don't know if that was added or if that was actually original, but it certainly is faded from its Union Jack glory. And that's what I love about this car. So, of course, we probably need to put on some racing stripes. We also need to do those mini driving lights. And then we also probably need to actually make these speakers back here work. The previous owner put in a whole bunch of speakers and took the radio. Go figure. All right, so where are you at?
Well, I'm actually not going to undo it yet. I thought of a better idea.
Yeah?
I just unplugged it.
Yep.
Let's plug the new one in and
All right.
see if we can.
See if it works.
Yeah, see if we can get anything to work out of the new one.
Can you even plug it in?
That's what I'm hoping for, Dan.
Uh-oh.
I think we're good.
Yeah?
All right. That's in.
I like it's red. It shows you where the, emergency cutoff switch is. So,
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
This is generic Napa part on a JDM spec Rover.
Wow.
Let's see if it works.
And as Ed China would say, result.
So it turns out,
For those of you Wheeler Dealer fans.
this is very important consumer information. Napa will lie to you. They will tell you their fuel cutoff switch doesn't work on a 1993 Rover Mini imported from Tokyo, but they lie because it will.
Either that or we completely bypassed it.
Yeah, or I just broke the little plug in it. It stripped. Well, there you have it.
All right, Tommy. Of course, next part of this continuing journey is a problem we'll never have with that car, which is getting it emissions legal. Because I think we spend the $750, put a new cat on it, and then if it doesn't fix it, then we take it in and get the exemption. What do you think?
That's the plan.
Yeah.
And we'll just plan on putting a new cat on it every 2 years.
Did you tell them about the other problem with this, the alternator?
No, the alternator bracket's broken, so it the belt squeaks a little bit. So it's a working project. We're getting there. It also needs new tires, but they're 12-inch wheels, and the tires on it they don't make anymore.
What kind are those on there? Are those are they a Japanese brand or are they?
Bridgestone,
You can't get them from Bridgestone?
made in Japan.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, I think these are a Japanese specific tire. I have a feeling because I couldn't find this size anywhere except for one brand of racing slicks.
Yeah, what's the size, Tommy?
They should be 165, 55 R12s. But good news is you can get the 165, 60 R12, so they'll be like.
So two questions we have for you before we say goodbye. First, do you know where to get these tires in America, and can you get them? And secondly, I think these are actually pretty cool Japanese wheels, but I don't like black. You think it would take the value out if we powder coated them white?
These are called rose petals.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to be black.
Really, I know, but
So they're always meant to be black.
are they the
against,
magnesium kind?
I don't know how you test for magnesium other
Yeah.
than starting a fire.
Yeah. Anyway,
Should we light it on fire and see if it burns?
it might do it on its own.
Case says yes, we should light it on fire. He's sick of it already. All right. Well, check out TFL Classics, guys.
Hold on. Keep it entertained a little bit longer.
It's long. People have stuff to do. Oh my goodness. What else can I show you? You can see the big hole in the dash where the radio is supposed to live. That's embarrassing. This is the original steering wheel. Oh, this is embarrassing too. I didn't have a keychain on me. So, you see this? Chevrolet, baby. Yeah, it's pretty clean though. This is, I believe, a real Cooper based off the VIN.
All right, so here's one last question, and we want to know in the comments below. So the original BMC wheel is that one, right? BMC. That's the one it came with. It's pretty cool.
I think because
We think it's original.
I think it's original.
Yeah, and the previous owner had put on this one, which is, pretty cool. So which one do you like better? Do you like, I think it's the original BMC, or do you like this snazzy, Nardi knockoff? What do you think?
Something like that.
Or is that the Nardi?
That's a Nardi.
That's the Nardi, so this is just
Knockoff Nardi.
a knockoff. Which one do you like better? Which one should we go with? That cabin's so dark that this may,
No, it doesn't matter. That wheel's still staying in it, Dad.
Okay, well,
I don't like the wood one.
All right, Stephanie doesn't like it.
Vetoed. Well, check out TFL Classics for the latest and greatest in classic car reviews.